When Sofia Castellano became Manhattan's most exclusive wedding planner, brides trusted her to create their perfect day. But when jealousy and obsession consumed her, she began poisoning brides on their wedding days, turning dream ceremonies into funeral processions while stealing their grooms and their fortunes. Before we get to this wonderful story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now let's get back to the story. The golden afternoon light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sofia Castellano's Madison Avenue office, illuminating the elegant displays of wedding albums, floral arrangements, and luxury fabric samples that showcased her reputation as New York City's most sought-after wedding planner. At 41 years old, Sofia had built an empire in the luxury wedding industry, orchestrating lavish ceremonies for Manhattan's elite that regularly cost upwards of $500,000 and were featured in prestigious bridal magazines worldwide. Sofia's client portfolio read like a society page directory, featuring tech billionaires marrying supermodels, Wall Street executives choosing trophy wives, and entertainment industry royalty celebrating their unions in venues that most people could only dream of visiting. Her weddings were legendary for their attention to detail, innovative design concepts, and flawless execution that made even the most demanding brides feel like princesses on their special day. The Castellano Events Office reflected Sofia's sophisticated aesthetic and commitment to perfection, featuring imported Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers that had once graced European palaces, and custom-designed consultation rooms where nervous brides could discuss their wedding fantasies in absolute privacy. Her walls were covered with photographs of celebrity weddings she had planned, testimonials from grateful clients, and awards from industry organizations that had recognized her innovative contributions to luxury event planning. But beneath Sofia's dedication to creating perfect weddings lay a twisted obsession with romance and marriage that had gradually evolved into something far more sinister. A systematic campaign of murder against brides who possessed everything Sofia had always wanted but could never achieve herself. "Good morning, Sofia," said Isabella Montgomery, her newest client and the 26-year-old heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune worth over $200 million. Isabella was engaged to Marcus Blackwood, a 34-year-old investment banker whom Sofia had secretly been obsessing over since meeting him at a charity gala 6 months earlier. "I'm so excited to begin planning what will hopefully be the most beautiful wedding Manhattan has ever seen." "Good morning, Isabella," Sofia replied with the warm, professional smile that had charmed hundreds of brides over her 15-year career. "I've already begun developing some preliminary concepts for your ceremony that will perfectly capture the romance and elegance you're seeking. This will be a celebration that you and Marcus will remember for the rest of your lives." Sofia had been carefully studying Isabella's relationship with Marcus for months, documenting their public appearances, social media interactions, and wedding planning decisions with the obsessive attention to detail that her clients believed was dedicated to creating perfect ceremonies. In reality, Sofia had become consumed with jealousy over Isabella's youth, beauty, wealth, and most importantly, her engagement to the man Sofia had decided should be hers. What Isabella didn't know was that Sofia had been systematically planning her murder for weeks, developing a complex poisoning scheme that would eliminate the bride on her wedding day while positioning Sofia to comfort Marcus in his grief and eventually become his second wife. Sofia's transformation from successful wedding planner to calculating killer had begun 3 years earlier when her own engagement to prominent attorney David Chen had ended in devastating public humiliation. David had discovered Sofia's affair with a married client and had exposed her infidelity at their engagement party, calling off their wedding in front of 200 guests and leaving Sofia emotionally destroyed and professionally embarrassed. The public rejection had triggered something dark within Sofia's psyche, awakening a murderous jealousy toward brides who possessed the happiness and love that had been cruelly taken from her. Her first victim had been Rebecca Walsh, a young socialite whose wedding Sofia had been planning when David had broken their engagement. Rebecca had died from apparent food poisoning on her wedding day, allowing Sofia to comfort the devastated groom and eventually begin a relationship with him. The success of her first murder had convinced Sofia that eliminating brides was not only emotionally satisfying, but also professionally profitable, as grieving widowers often turned to her for comfort and eventually became romantic partners who could provide the wealth and status she desperately craved. Over the past 3 years, Sophia had murdered 8 brides using sophisticated poisoning methods that made their deaths appear to be tragic accidents or medical emergencies during their wedding celebrations. "Sophia, I need to discuss some concerns about Isabella Montgomery's wedding," said Dr. Patricia Williams, the event medical coordinator who provided emergency medical services for high-profile weddings and had begun noticing disturbing patterns in the bride fatalities at Sophia's events. Dr. Williams had worked with Sophia for 2 years and had become increasingly suspicious about the unusual number of medical emergencies that occurred during her weddings. "Of course, Dr. Williams," Sophia replied, though she felt the familiar surge of anxiety that accompanied any medical scrutiny of her wedding events. "What specific concerns do you have about Isabella's ceremony?" Dr. Williams pulled out a thick file containing medical reports and incident documentation from Sophia's recent weddings. "Sophia, I've been reviewing the medical data from your events over the past 3 years, and I found some alarming patterns. 8 brides have died during or immediately after their wedding ceremonies, all showing symptoms consistent with poisoning rather than natural medical emergencies." Dr. Williams's investigation represented a serious threat to Sophia's criminal operation, as the physician had access to medical evidence that could expose the systematic poisoning of brides and connect all the deaths to Sophia's wedding planning business. "Dr. Williams, those deaths were tragic coincidences that have devastated me personally and professionally," Sophia said carefully, while mentally reviewing her options for eliminating the physician before she could report her findings to medical authorities or law enforcement. "Wealthy young women often have underlying health conditions or eating disorders that can cause unexpected medical crises during stressful events like weddings." Dr. Williams wasn't convinced by Sophia's explanations, having worked in emergency medicine long enough to recognize the difference between legitimate medical emergencies and suspicious patterns that might indicate deliberate poisoning. "Sophia, the toxicology reports from several of these cases show evidence of exotic plant toxins that don't occur naturally in wedding food or floral arrangements. Someone with botanical knowledge has been deliberately administering these substances." The physician's direct mention of toxicology evidence in plant-based poisons confirmed Sophia's fears that medical investigators were beginning to identify the actual causes of her victims' deaths, rather than accepting them as natural medical emergencies during wedding stress. Sophia's method of murder had become increasingly sophisticated as she developed expertise in extracting deadly compounds from ornamental plants commonly used in wedding decorations. Over the past year, Sophia had transformed her apartment's greenhouse into a clandestine laboratory where she cultivated poisonous plants and extracted lethal compounds using chemistry knowledge gained from online courses and botanical texts. Her collection included oleander for cardiac glycosides, castor beans for ricin production, and death-cap mushrooms for liver-destroying amatoxins. Her poison delivery methods were ingeniously disguised as normal wedding services. She had developed techniques for contaminating bridal bouquets with contact poisons, lacing wedding cake frosting with delayed-action toxins, and preparing poisoned champagne for bridal toasts that would cause death hours after consumption. Sophia's targets were carefully selected based on their groom's wealth and emotional vulnerability. She had eliminated brides whose husbands were prominent businessmen, inheriting widowers, and emotionally dependent men who would be likely to seek comfort from their deceased wives' wedding planner. "Miss Castellano, I'm Detective Rivera with the NYPD," announced Detective Carmen Rivera as she entered Sophia's office, carrying a warrant for inspection of the business's financial records and client files. Detective Rivera specialized in investigating suspicious deaths related to service industries and had developed expertise in identifying patterns of client victimization by trusted professionals. Sophia's reaction to the detective's arrival was immediate panic, as she realized that law enforcement was investigating activities that could expose her entire criminal operation. Her reputation in the wedding industry and connections to wealthy clients had always protected her from scrutiny, but the presence of a police detective with a search warrant suggested that her criminal activities had attracted serious official attention. "Of course, Detective Rivera," Sophia replied, struggling to maintain her professional composure while abandoning any immediate plans to harm Dr. Williams. "I want to cooperate fully with any investigation. Client safety and satisfaction are my highest priorities, and I'm always willing to review our procedures to ensure we maintain the highest standards." Dr. Williams looked relieved at the detective's arrival, having begun to feel uncomfortable about Sophia's increasing defensiveness regarding the medical emergencies at her events. The physician's medical training had taught her to recognize signs of professional misconduct and potential criminal behavior. Rivera explained that her investigation involved several suspicious deaths that had occurred during luxury wedding events, with particular focus on cases where brides had died under mysterious circumstances while their wedding planners had subsequently developed relationships with the grieving widowers. "We're specifically interested in event planners who have unusual access to food preparation, floral arrangements, and other materials that could be used to administer harmful substances." The detective's description of her investigation was focused on exactly the type of criminal activity that Sophia had been engaging in, creating an immediate threat that would require careful handling to avoid exposure. "Detective Rivera, I can provide you with complete access to our vendor relationships and safety protocols," Sophia said, her anxiety increasing as she realized that the police investigation had progressed far enough to include search warrants and detailed questioning about her business practices. "Every aspect of our wedding planning process is documented and follows established industry safety guidelines." Dr. Williams interrupted the conversation with information that would prove crucial to the investigation. "Detective Rivera, actually, I've been documenting medical concerns about the unusual pattern of bride deaths at Miss Castellano's events. The toxicology evidence suggests deliberate poisoning with plant-based compounds that would require specialized botanical knowledge to extract and administer." The physician's revelation confirmed Rivera's suspicions about deliberate murders disguised as wedding day medical emergencies, providing the evidence needed to expand the investigation into potential serial killing charges rather than just professional negligence. Sophia's response revealed the depth of her desperation and the twisted psychology that had driven her to murder 8 innocent brides. "Detective Rivera, Dr. Williams, you don't understand the pressures and challenges of creating perfect weddings for demanding clients," Sophia said frantically, her professional facade finally cracking under the weight of the investigation. "These young women had everything: beauty, wealth, love. While women like me who've dedicated our lives to their happiness are left with nothing but the memories of other people's perfect days." Rivera's law enforcement training had taught her to recognize when suspects were having psychological breakdowns that might lead to confessions or additional violence. Sophia's behavior clearly indicated that she was involved in the bride murders and was becoming increasingly unstable as her criminal activities were exposed. "Miss Castellano, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder and illegal administration of toxic substances," Detective Rivera announced as she drew her service weapon and called for backup assistance. "You have the right to remain silent and the right to have an attorney present during questioning." Sophia's reaction to her arrest was a mixture of rage and self-pity as she realized that her carefully constructed wedding business was collapsing around her. "You're destroying the life I built helping people create their most beautiful memories. I gave everything to make their dreams come true, and this is how I'm repaid." The investigation that followed Sophia's arrest revealed the full scope of her criminal activities and the sophisticated botanical laboratory she had created to manufacture deadly wedding poisons. Forensic analysis of Sophia's apartment greenhouse revealed an extensive collection of poisonous plants and sophisticated chemistry equipment that she had been using to extract and refine various toxins. Her detailed research notes provided evidence of her systematic study of poison effects and her careful planning of each murder to avoid detection by medical examiners. The investigation also uncovered Sophia's comprehensive surveillance and manipulation of grieving widowers, including detailed psychological profiles and seduction strategies designed to make them emotionally dependent on her support. She had successfully married 2 of her victims' widowed husbands and had been planning to marry Marcus Blackwood after eliminating Isabella. Most disturbing was the discovery of Sophia's detailed plans for murdering additional brides, including a target list of upcoming clients whose grooms met her criteria for wealth, vulnerability, and romantic potential. Her wedding planning business had become a sophisticated operation for identifying and eliminating wealthy young women while positioning herself to inherit their lives and relationships. Sophia Castellano was ultimately convicted of 8 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit organized criminal activity, illegal distribution of toxic substances, and multiple counts of fraud related to her manipulation of grieving widowers. The conviction sent shockwaves through the luxury wedding industry and prompted comprehensive reforms in event planning certification requirements and vendor oversight procedures. Several other high-end wedding planners were investigated for similar criminal activities, leading to increased scrutiny of the entire industry. Dr. Williams received recognition for her courage in exposing Sophia's criminal activities and helped develop new medical oversight protocols for large-scale events that involve food service and floral arrangements. Her expertise in toxicology became crucial for identifying similar cases of deliberate poisoning disguised as wedding day emergencies. Isabella Montgomery and Marcus Blackwood were able to proceed with their wedding under heavy security, but the trauma of discovering their wedding planner's murderous intentions required extensive counseling and completely changed their perspective on trusting service providers with their personal safety. Detective Rivera's investigation became a model for identifying criminal exploitation of service industry positions and led to the discovery of several other professionals who had been using their access to wealthy clients for criminal purposes. The case prompted comprehensive changes in luxury service industry regulation, including mandatory background checks for event planners, medical oversight requirements for large gatherings, and enhanced reporting procedures for suspicious deaths or illnesses during professional events. Sophia's conviction also led to increased scrutiny of romantic relationships that developed between service providers and recently widowed clients, with new protocols designed to identify cases where the service provider might have had motives for causing their client's spouse's death. The wedding industry established new ethical guidelines and professional standards designed to protect clients from exploitation by vendors who might abuse their positions of trust and access to intimate personal information about wealthy families. 5 years after Sophia's conviction, the wedding industry continued to implement safeguards designed to protect brides from exploitation by unethical planners who might abuse their positions of trust and intimate access to wedding celebrations. Sophia's former office space was eventually converted into a nonprofit organization that provided free wedding planning services for military families and domestic violence survivors, symbolically transforming a site of criminal exploitation into a resource for genuine love and healing. The families of Sophia's victims established a foundation dedicated to promoting ethical practices in the event planning industry and providing support for people who had been harmed by trusted service providers. Their advocacy efforts contributed to significant improvements in industry standards and consumer protection measures. Dr. Williams continued her work in emergency medicine while serving as an expert witness in cases involving suspicious deaths during large events. Her expertise helped identify several other criminal operations that had been exploiting the chaos and emotion of weddings and celebrations to commit various crimes against wealthy clients. The wedding planner who had promised to create perfect days had instead used her expertise to end lives and destroy families. But her crimes had been exposed, and her victims had found justice through the dedication of investigators who refused to accept suspicious deaths as mere wedding day tragedies. Sophia Castellano's deadly vows had been to herself rather than to serving her clients, promising to eliminate anyone who possessed the love and happiness she felt she deserved. Her case served as a permanent reminder that positions of trust in intimate celebrations could be exploited by criminals willing to betray the fundamental principles of love and commitment. The empty wedding venues where Sophia had committed her crimes stood as symbols of the trust that had been violated and the dreams that had been destroyed by her systematic abuse of professional relationships and client vulnerability. The wedding planner's deadly vows had ended in criminal conviction and life imprisonment, proving that even the most sophisticated criminal operations could be exposed when dedicated investigators and ethical professionals work together to protect innocent people from exploitation by those who would abuse their positions of trust during life's most precious moments. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.